Hey, everybody. I am here with Sarah Poet, and we just discussed this. She's a soul doula, and I love that term. And I found her in the wonderful world of Facebook, reading some of her incredible posts on conscious relating and feminine and masculine and all of that beautiful work. So that is who I have today, and I'm so excited to talk to you, Sarah. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
I'm so sorry about my cough. It's already been showing up before we hit record, and now it's here again. But okay, so can you just start us out by telling me a little bit about how you got into and got drawn into the work of being a soul doula?
Yeah, that's a long story to start, so I'll try to shrink it on down. I think that, well, I was born on the day of the soul searcher. And yeah. And I saw that like in an astrology book that my Christian father would not have had me looking at, when I was like a teenager, and I was relatively lost because like I didn't find people like me anywhere around me. And so I was like always searching for like the depth, like I wanted the depth of the experience and like the lesson and, the meaning. And sometimes I propel the shit out of people, because I'm always kind of like, oh, you don't want to look under that rock, but like what's under that rock is everything, it's like everything we need before we can take another step on the path. And so, we can get into this, but I became I lost my soul along the way, as I think we all do, because I was kind of given a formula for success, as a woman, as a person, as we are in this culture, where it was like, go out and succeed, make something of yourself. And because of the shame of one particular experience, that landed so hard. And so for like a decade and a half, I was just doing that. I was like perpetually striving, and then woke up to what had been lost. I didn't know the depth of what had been lost, but I woke up that like something had been lost, and started walking myself back to myself, like consciously remembering that I was a woman, like looking at my tendencies to be like emasculating as a woman, and started to learn this language of masculine feminine that called so deeply like to the center of me. And like long before I had any business talking about any of it, it was just like my hobby. Like reading like Marion Woodman and Robert Moore was like my favorite thing to do, like geeking out about it, right? And so in all of my striving, I like earned 2 master's degrees in education, and I was a school principal and had this vision for embodied breath. I didn't actually even name it that. Like the name was like, given to me, like it landed. And it was like, here's what you're doing. And I was like, okay, like I'm following directions, like following the directions of my soul, So then rather than like going after something, it becomes like we have this relationship with the soul, with spirit, where you're like, oh, okay, this is what I'm hearing is my next call, And so embodied breath like became that. And then when I said yes to it, kind of like initiation after initiation. And so I do a lot of different things like within my work, but one of my oldest friends said to me, because like life coach is like, wah, wah, like we all know that term, but it's like, so it's recognizable, but it doesn't really distinguish the essence of what each life coach does, you know?
Not at all.
And so my oldest friend was like, I think you're a soul doula. And I was like, yum. Yes, I think I am too. So we do really soulful work with embodied breath and kind of like the nature of who I am. Like I was saying, what was shameful along the way, like, you know, where I was kind of intense or wanted that depth and it repulsed certain people. I mean, I don't want my ego involved in this statement, but it's like, sometimes if you can't sit with me, you can't sit with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I recognize about like the call that I am inherently bringing to people. You know, it's like, come face yourself. Let's do this.
Oh my gosh.
So that's the short of the long of the short, whatever.
There's like so much in there that I'm like, I want to unpack, and I love it. And I'm also just like chuckling to myself because what you're talking about is like, again, always, I just feel like I get the first round of medicine on these conversations with people, and it's always perfect timing. It's always amazing. And what I've noticed is that when I go back to release the episodes, you know, it's usually a few weeks later, and there will be a totally different set of things that I hear in it that are also perfectly timed to whatever's going on in life or in, you know, society right then. So I love it. First of all, I really would love to have you, if you want, and if it feels right and it feels, you know, like it's a yes for you, I would love to have you go a little bit more in depth on that relationship to your difficult personality parts and like the things about you that were like, oh my gosh, this is too much. This is too intense. Just selfishly, I would love to hear you talk more about that, because it is like it's come up so often lately in conversations with women around me. And I think it's a big thing, and we all have it in our own way, right? Like we all have our own parts of ourselves that were hard to befriend. But I love hearing you even just allude to the way that turned around and became like your soul's calling in your work. So can you go a little more in depth on that? Is there?
Sure. Okay. Sure. Yeah. So I think all women, you know, we can relate to this. Like there's a collective story about feminine repression, right? Or there's actually a collective story regardless of like feminine, masculine, or gender, where who we are sort of, our essence is not cultivated. I worked 15 years in the school system, like progressive schools, that were not doing soul cultivation. Mm-hmm. So we are like at 5 years old put into, you know, a giant system where like the answers are always outside of yourself, you know? And so rather than learn to look inside and value our soul, our essence, like our divine uniqueness, our divine expression, like we're asked to turn that off, you know. And as a woman, you know, I'm trying to like write a memoir right now, and I thought that the memoir was, so I lost my first child at the age of 18 to adoption. And like before that, there was this evolution of myself, like of my feminine being, like underneath, that was sensual, that like knew herself. You know, this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying like something was lost back there, you know, and I was like cultivating it underneath. I was kind of like, I was always a rebel heart. So I had this like Christian father who was like, you will do as I say. And then there was this like rebel me that was like, no, fuck you. I'm definitely going to follow my own path, you know. But that fight actually, by the time I got pregnant at 18, that fight was completely repressed. Like I'd lost. And so like my essence as a sexual being like turned off. You know, the shame of that experience, the like the judgment of being 18 and pregnant before you were like quote unquote supposed to be, in the world. And then like the prescription for success, again, back to like what the system values, you know, the prescription for success became, well, like you don't have enough money yet, so go earn money. You don't have enough education yet, so go back to school. You are not old enough yet, so go make something of yourself. You don't have the right partnership yet, so go find one and secure it, you know? And so like for years after that, I had this impression deep in my psychology, because I was always a deep person, but like this had kind of taken over where like I'd lost myself. And then there was this striving and perfection orientation because something so big had been lost that like I was trying to fill that hole with every action. To the point where I had severe adrenal fatigue by the age of 32. Like I was collapsing because like I was
our bodies tell us stuff, right? Like,
yeah. And it had been for years, you know, but I just like kept pushing through. So, so I don't know if that answers your original question. Your original question, can you reword it again? Because I want to address like women more so than just tell my story, but I tell my story because it's a woman's story.
Well, it was super powerful answer to the question. I think it landed either way, but I just, like the calling of like those pieces of you as you reclaimed them, you know, I was just asking you about like how that shows up, and maybe even, I think you did answer it, but maybe even just very much like, here's these things about me that were so unacceptable to me, or that were unacceptable to society, or that were lost, pushed underground, that now have, you know, come to be work.
Right. And I just want to say this because, you know, we live in a world where there's social media and there's Instagram, and like, we're all posting these positive aspects of ourselves. Right. And I want to really say that like, to go after oneself is gritty ass work. Oh my gosh. Like, you know, it's not pretty. It's like, it's a reclamation. And I think, you know, I think there's a danger for women in doing this in a surface kind of way. So in the last couple of weeks, I've actually, I haven't done it because I haven't decided if it's like actually important or not, but here I am talking about it. So on like December 31st of 2018, this like major life switch happened for me that I didn't see coming, and rocked my world. And, you know, like I owned some of that on social media because I was like, fuck perfectionism. Like, this is how we go through. Right. And, you know, I had like people come in to support and say like, here, I want to offer you a massage. Here, I want to offer you like this kind of coaching. Here, I want to offer you this kind of conversation. I have spent like, and I have a lifestyle where I can afford to do this, right? In terms of like time and where I allocate my time, because I work for myself and so I can be flexible. But I prioritize self-care and deep exploration and my own shadow work. You know, I was like, okay, if this is happening in my external, then something's happening in my internal. And like, I wanted to calculate the number of hours and just say like, women, this is the kind of work I'm talking about, you know, like diving into yourself over and over and over again. Like, people have said to me like, Sarah, I don't know anybody that does more self-work than you. Like, you're like relentless.
Girl,
you know? And so, you know, that's kind of like, that's the, like, I'm naturally intense. That's the space that I hold for my people when they come to embodied breath. It's like, it's going to be gentle and loving, but like, of course we're going to go deep because like, we have to go like to the underworld, to the upper world, you know, we have to keep digging it up and looking at it and getting really honest with ourselves, and transmuting that dark. And that's how we grow. The incorporation, you know, this whole like love and light culture, like, scares the fuck out of me because it's bypassing like all over the place.
Well, so I found you first from that poem, or yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful poem that you wrote about like women basically don't turn your love off. Don't do his work for him. Don't, I don't know if you have a name for it, but that poem, and I'll share it in the show notes. But
Great.
And I was so drawn to it because of basically this call of like radical sovereignty, radical responsibility for yourself, and radically keeping your heart open. Mm-hmm. And what I have seen, like as I have dug a little deeper in your work, is that reality that doesn't happen in a love and light culture. Everybody's good and happy. That happens. You cannot keep your heart that open. You cannot keep loving. You cannot take that much responsibility for yourself unless you are also like befriending the massive like grittiness of the dark, like you're talking about.
Right. And the shadow is going to get you. Like the shadow is going to kick your ass if you do not acknowledge it. Like, I'm sorry to laugh, but like happens every time, Mm-hmm. And, so, and we accumulate trauma just by nature of being human. And, I had accumulated a significant amount of trauma, like in the pregnancy and birth and losing a child. Right. But I also had trauma before that, and like trauma related to the masculine. Mm-hmm. And so, as I was, walking myself back to myself, it's like, I'm in Hakomi trauma therapy. I'm in energy work. I'm in shadow work. I'm in the work with myself, like, diving deep. And for me, it started like with, I was consciously reclaiming the feminine. I knew that was a thing. I was like, wait, I was a school principal, and I was like, wait, there's like a thing called intuition that women are supposed to have. I'm exhausted. I'm sick. And like every time I'm in a meeting and I say like, hey, I'm pretty sure my gut's telling me that this is the next move. It was like, like in that education culture, it's like, well, where does that say that in the book or in the rules or in the, like in the way we do things? And I was like, but this kid needs this, And so I was like, come on, people. So for me, like with the reclamation of the feminine, like alongside that really came the trauma healing, much of which had to do with the trauma that I held in relation to the masculine. Like the trauma in my system that told me it is not safe to open up. It is not safe to like let someone touch you. It's not safe to perform certain sexual acts. Like all of that lived in my system, and that, trauma in the system does all sorts of things, but we have like these fight or flight patterns that stay until healed, right? Or stay until like, seen and held, and, it's really compassion, like self-compassionate work. Mm-hmm. And so my walk has been one of, now women can laugh at me. Sure. Let me be that example that you can laugh at. But like, when I walked out of my marriage, I was like, I know that I never want to be this kind of woman. Like this, the woman that we commonly are, like the emasculating, like, oh, if he's not going to do it, I'm going to do it. Oh, if he's not going to earn the money, I'm going to have to earn the money. I have to go back to school. Like, I'll take care of it if he won't take care of it. It's pretty fucking familiar. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I say fuck a lot.
So everybody, all my guests do it.
Okay, good. And so, I was like conscious that I never wanted to be that kind of woman again. And so I was like, well, what is the divine feminine? And what I continued to find is that like, I really like myself as a woman. I like how far I've come. I really love men, and I love the space that I hold for men. I've worked with males, like primarily with males, even in my education career. Like I worked with adolescent males for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like
Yeah.
I understand the masculine. And I kept trying to show up in a way that was like gaining love and acceptance from the masculine. You know, it was almost like this, like, well, aren't I divinely feminine enough yet? You know? And I kept getting my ass kicked. Like even another iteration, like really just recently happened where like I did not recognize all of the projection of like, oh, she understands this much. And so she'll never mess up. She'll never like hurt me. She'll never be like those other bitches. Right. And
Wow.
like,
Yeah.
and then when I did, and like I was human for a minute, then like the cascade of hurt like blew up in my face. And I won't go into that right now because it's still like fresh and sensitive with other beings on the planet. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, there was this lack of discernment about my personal sovereignty. And we see that all the time in relationship, all the time.
Yeah. So like, how do you work with that? And when you're, tell me, talk to me
That's
about
everything. Yeah. So I think we have to know ourselves as sovereign beings or be on a conscious path to knowing ourselves as sovereign beings. And then be relating from that place, like both people consciously. And when I'm talking about conscious union, I'm talking about like you're doing, you know, what I'm calling this work of like digging deep, coming up, like learning the thing, like the gritty aspect of life, like two people doing that together. And, you know, sadly, the old paradigm of relationship is like we find the person, we partner, we achieve the things like jobs and house and children. And then like we hope that that's going to be fulfilling. And
basically,
like,
both have to die. Both of you just have to stop growing right then.
yeah, it's a unfortunate prescription because you know it's often not going to work out. Like what, over 50% right now, it's not working out. And so we need a new paradigm of relationship. Like we need a different way. And so when I work with couples, you know, like really who I want to attract to my coaching practice right now is like couples who are like, okay, we're in it. We love each other. We want to be together. I work with conscious separation too, but like really what I'm doing mostly in 2019 is we want to stay together and we want to shift from this old paradigm into a new paradigm of conscious union. And so then I teach them like how to separate out their own sovereign path and like the tools for looking at like where you project onto the other person. Like what I mean by that is if I have a trauma, I'll just be personally, right? Like, so if I have a trauma that is related to like, it's going to be big or small, subtle or really obvious. So like, let's say there's a trauma pattern in my body that's stuck around like men can't put their hands on me harshly or like, or force, like, I don't even mean violently. I just mean like with pressure. Right. And so, you know, when that happens, I feel confined. I'm just kind of making this up right now. And so maybe my partner is like super loving, but you know, like every time he tries to touch me, this like alarm system goes off in my brain. So what my practice does is like, we look at the trauma patterns in the body and the brain and then the energetic body. And then I also teach each person how to like see that's just what that is. It's a trauma pattern and we don't have to like loop into that. And then, you know, as the woman, if that's my pattern, I have to watch my projection of my own pattern onto my partner or onto my next partner. Because like if we have these unresolved trauma patterns as women and for damn sure as men as well, and we're projecting it onto like the whole of the masculine or the whole of the feminine. And it's playing out in our relationships and it's playing out in our world.
Big time.
Gosh, I could talk about that forever.
Well, do it, because I was just going to say that. Like, I feel like sometimes I look out at the world and at personal relationships too, and it's like, would it be safe to say that almost 100% of our interactions are projection right now? You know, like sometimes it just feels like, oh my gosh. So please do talk to me about it at large and in the world here.
Yeah, that is such a powerful statement. You know, I think that, yes, like we have so much fear at play in the space between masculine and feminine and like how those are relating. And we bring forward the traumas that we know, and we bring forward our lineage. So what I've been working with right now, what's come up for me in the sovereignty piece, you know, I was like looking at this and I was like, I love this man. I love this human. I could see his soul essence. We were both in agreement of like what we had come to do on this planet and the depth of our union. Like we had really kind of only just begun, but it was one of those like soul unions where it's like fiery to come in and then like giant combustion. Yeah. And, you know, in one of my self-reflections, I was like looking at, okay, how do I collectively engage with men? And how do I collectively engage with women? Mm-hmm. And where do I make allowances or have compassion? And in one sense, like I am more allowing of the masculine, maybe because I want it more, maybe because I watched my mother be very permissive. You know, like we live in this like power over culture. And so there's like this, I want the love of the masculine and I want to be a strong woman, but like, what am I making allowances for that like just isn't okay anymore? And then I looked at how I collectively relate to women, and I was like, I hold a higher standard for women a little bit than I do for men. Like these are just my own like shadow experiences that I'm navigating at this moment, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm saying they're in all of us, all of these associations. And my mom had 3 daughters. My mother's mother was extremely harsh on her to go out and succeed, you know, because like women are often associating with that unconscious masculine aspect, like that unhealthy masculine energy. So, you know, when I got pregnant and my mother said to me, go out and make something of yourself, my mother was not being cruel. She was like perpetuating the recipe she knew, you know? And so, like the expectation, my sisters and I, we kick ass, like in our professions, like as people, like we are unfuckwithable. You know what I mean? Because like, that's what we, that's what we were taught, you know, but there's this like, so I sometimes hold women to a different standard than men. And then I was like, interesting. Oh, that stops now. You know? So now I'm working on like, oh, there's this, and I have a lot more thoughts about this and like how I want to invite this into the collective. But yeah, it's this sovereign love coming outward, you know, for everyone, and like this belief in everyone, and in each divine soul, like regardless of the proof that you have given me so far. And I can only see others like that when I do my own stuff.
Whoa. Yes.
Do you see that? Like,
yes.
As long as I had that difference in like, like dichotomy and how I saw the world, that's how I was interacting with the world. And that's what was like happening on the inside of me, causing my own turbulence.
Yeah.
So then upon further, right. So like the only work really is like the work that we're doing inside to
Mhm.
heal how we relate. And then like we can interact differently in the collective, in our relationships and beyond, you know? So fuck yes, we have giant projections going on
Yeah.
everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So you're like about to launch a program, right? Like a new program.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about it, and also, I'm sure we're already getting it. I hear you like talking to me about how you're working with people. So tell me a little bit about the program.
Yeah. So what's been like brewing is a 4-week jumpstart, and I wanted to do this in a group. So couples in a group. So there needs to be some level of like conscious awareness to say like, okay, I'm going to bring my stuff into a group setting with my partner, which is vulnerable, and I hold a safe space, right? Mm-hmm. But I want to explore, how do we share what I call personal truth with one another? And I'm not talking about like this feminine, like over feminized, like, let's talk it out. Let's talk about our feelings. I'm talking like men have truths that they do not feel safe sharing, like truths about vulnerability, truths about the shame that they carry, truths about their anger. Like men are raging and there's not a place to put that. They're raging at women, like still. And men are going to, side note, like men are going to hate the feminine. Like they're going to crave it and they're going to hate it until they've done their own initiatory work. Like, and it's really complex and it's really like under talked about. So this group is just like 4 weeks jumpstart. How do we do this? And calling people to this experiment. Like, okay, so if you're going to say, I want it to be safe in my relationship to be and say who I am. A lot of people don't feel safe to be themselves in their relationship. Like that's old paradigm.
Right.
And so really what I'm feeling called to do right now is start new conversations and like new experiments. So I definitely have a program and I have a plan, and I'll like make it very safe. Like if you do these things and talk about these things and do these exercises, then like that's all you got to do, like it will lead to the magic. Yeah. But there's like this calling for who is willing to step into the experiment of the new, And while I'm talking about masculine, feminine, I specifically do talk about women and men a lot because like the genders are suffering, but like in no way am I like excluding any human being regardless of like sexual orientation or gender or like anything like that. So definitely same-sex couples, definitely like whoever you be, we're talking about the dynamic between two people and how we're relating and how those energies, how those energies and patterns are pinging off of each other or harmoniously coexisting.
Yeah. So will it be like a virtual space where you guys meet like this, or what's
virtual space. And I don't know when this will air, but the start date's February 10th and I'm only taking 6 couples. I might do it again, if it flies, but I work with couples for 90 days and we dive deep, and so this is like a taste, a start. It'll be a full program in and of itself. And then if people want to work with me afterward, we can go deeper.
Okay. Well, I think this episode should drop right at the beginning of February. So if that call's out there, somebody will find you,
Yeah. It's the whole program just sort of like intuitively downloaded, even in the midst of everything that was going on in my relationship. Like in the first week of January, it's like when I got quiet, this is what came in. And so, like we are navigating something that is difficult. Like, I don't believe that it always has to be difficult, but it's real. Like, this man and I believed that we were like on a soul journey to be like in union and bring union forward. Mm-hmm. And we combusted, so it's like, you can have like, you can have the recipe, like you can have all the signs, and it's still like gritty work daily to like show up to love,
Yeah. That's the work ultimately, right? Like,
yes,
like into ourselves and with each other. And I love how you like, you're very obviously, even having just only recently come across your work, like you are very obviously somebody who like gets those powerful downloads by opening, by like, I love that. I love that it came through. I love that you shared that it started coming through. I love that you're like, this is the real shit that's happening right now. And it's right also now creating something really beautiful right now, simultaneously. And it's beauty all at once, and it's happening right now. And I love that. I think that's so powerful.
Yes. And I want to say, for anyone listening, like back to that conversation that we had about like perfectionism and this and that, like at the beginning of 2018, I hid a very similar story and like did the striving thing, even in embodied breath. Like, even, I was like, oh my gosh, who's going to accept me as this coach person? But I was like, my trauma brain was so up. I was so scared about like survival, like I'm starting a business and something happens in my life that like, so it's always a progression. And like, so when this happened at the beginning of 2019, I was like, I see why I'm being given round 2.
I love that.
And it's
always there.
Closing down. Yeah. Right. Or around 55. Like, I don't know.
The invitations just keep coming, honestly. They're just like the next.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely.
Okay, so before we have to wrap up, I want to make sure that like people can find you the way, like, where do you want them to go? What's the best way to connect with you?
Great. So I'm Sarah Poet on Facebook. I'm also Embodied Breath on Facebook, and my website is yourembodiedbreath.com.
Okay.
There's so much great. Yeah, there's so much great information on my website because I really want people to just like have a feel for me, and then you'll either like you'll get your yes or your no in your gut,
Which is, I love it.
Yeah, and fear is not a no.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so we have to wrap up in like 4 minutes, but talk about that. Do it like that is so. Just you have to dig into that for a minute. I can't.
Okay, so like trauma brain 101, like that which is outside of our comfort zone is going to make our brain freak out. Like on a neuro level, like our brain is going to go, not safe if we are trying to form a new pattern, right? So if you consciously want to grow your life, you're going to have to develop a relationship with your fear and know when it's like ego fear versus like a true no, and a lot of times like where we're wanting to grow, we are going to have to face the thing that we are afraid of. And so if you're like, oh, Sarah Poet does some work, I don't think she's for me, like really check in with like, is she not for me, or am I like scared right now because I know this is the real deal, or whoever you choose to work with, like whoever. But don't hold yourself back because of fear.
What do you think is like what's a handy tool for what's a way that we can feel that out, like the difference between a fear being, or like a fear that is not a no and a fear that's like an intuitive check of like, no, this is not good. Like, what do you
I like in 2 minutes or less, slow down. Like, we live in a really fast-paced culture, so everything I do is based in mindfulness and conscious awareness. And we slow down first. Like, even though I'm having this conversation in a very fast way, because it's like a podcast, we're fitting it all in, right? We must create the moments of stillness in our daily life, like as daily practice, daily ritual, where we're honoring the space for a true voice to be heard. So like when I start working with people and I start working with women and I ask them like, what do you want? They don't know. Like we have turned ourselves off from the permission to be ourselves or want what we want because it wasn't safe. Like these are tremendously like heroic actions that we're taking when we decide to reclaim ourselves. And, you know, and it's like, that's this world of like life coaching or soul doula or manifestation queen and like all of it, you know, it's like, we see that the world is waking up and it's like, ooh, who's waking up next? Like, let's wake up together. Like, let's help each other out. Right?
Yes.
And you're doing it with your podcast. You're like, I want to wake us up.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And like the world only changes when we reclaim our sovereign soul. Because like the world needs my soul light and the world needs your soul light and the world needs like my son turns 10 today. Like he needs his soul light, you know?
Look at that. That was like, I like couldn't write down fast enough, so I just stopped trying. I'm like, I'm just gonna have to listen to it again and write it all down. But, oh my gosh, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for those incredible truth bombs. And I have like, I'm not in a relationship right now, but I'm like, I want to work in this. I want to go to this program you're doing and personal truth. But I also feel like I have some beautiful soul sisters that I want to ping for you because it's some powerful stuff going on.
Right. And this group is like, we are going to hold, just because I'm a woman, like I'm not holding women and men like disproportionately, you know, like
I can feel that.
I'm really like, they're really seeking to do my best, to honor the space between like in a really neutral way. Like I speak man, you know, and they're like, oh, you get me, you know,
it's powerful.
Yeah. So yeah, but I think it's like this kind of I don't want to open this up, but it takes a certain level of consciousness in a man, like an initiated man, to do this work. Right? We can have another conversation about that. Like,
yeah, I think we definitely need a part 2.
Yeah.
I feel that.
Right. Yeah. So like if a man is still like, oh, I can't work with a woman coach, or my wife is dragging me to coaching or to therapy, like that's old story and it's not going to work. And that man needs to do his own like initiatory work and she needs to stop dragging him.
Which full circle totally reminds me of the poem that I found you. So.
Yeah.
I love it. I will make sure to link that up since I referenced it twice so everybody can find it. But.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we definitely need a part 2. I think that's just already decided for us.
Okay.
So I will connect with you and we can get that on the books. But thank you so much. And
thank you.
So much love for you. And happy birthday to your son.
Thanks.
Enjoy celebrating.
Yes, absolutely. So good to be with you.
All right. You too.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.